Mr. Speaker, since Monday, when we started the deliberations in this Parliament, I've heard a number of misinformation, and I am obliged to respond to some of them. The first speaker from the opposition benches, Ms. Waldon Desir, spoke about the Hutus and the Tutsis of Rwanda. She spoke about the Nazis and tried to stir up racial tension. Mr. Speaker, there is a name called Radovan Karadzic. Radovan Karadzic was known in the Bosnian War. He was captured, he was taken to a court, an international court, and he was tried and he was found to be guilty of war crimes, genocide, and that was done as recent as 2016 when he was found guilty. Mr. Speaker, the reason I raise this matter is because we find that the arguments most of the time coming from the opposition benches, and I find that they have not returned from lunches yet, but most of them. But most of the time, and the previous speakers that we heard, most of the arguments, it circles and has a racial undertone. And this is a dangerous thing. When we found Guyana from the no confidence motion with all of the ruckus leading up to the election March 2nd, Guyana, after we took it in August 2nd, it was a country that was broken at every bone. The country was divided. The country was divided deeply. And to continue after a government has been lawfully elected and in office, to continue with these tensions and these racial undertones is something that is a dangerous path. And for those who are listening, I know this Parliament has a live feed, and a lot of people around the world follow it in the diaspora, Guyana and the region. They follow what is said here, and for us to continue down this path, Mr. Speaker, I am saying it's a dangerous path. We must stay away from it. I have to respond. I have to respond to the Honourable Member Sherrod Duncan. In his remarks in his presentation to this Parliament said that no help for small businesses is in this 2021 budget, and that the APNU, they did well for small businesses. Something around that, he said. I could not gather the exact wording from the answer, but that is something around that is what he said. But I want to respond to that. And I respond to that by quoting the numbers. Last night, I took the time to go through the volumes from 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. Well, I have 20 and 21, which was done under us. But in those volumes, Mr. Speaker, in 2015, the tax revenue for the state that they brought in was $135 billion. In 2016, it went up to $142.8 billion. In 2017, it went up to $171.1 billion. In 2018, it went further up to $199.2 billion. In 2019, in a single year, it moved to $226.5 billion. So in that single year from 2018 to 2019, the tax increase was 13.5%. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves, where is this tax coming from? Who is paying this tax? This tax, without a doubt, is paid by households and employees and corporations. So, long and short of it, if you take 2015 at $135 billion, and you come to 2019, which is $226.5 billion, that is a 67% increase from the base year. That is the record of the APNU government, and you cannot hide from it. It is in every volume of the budget. That is the record. Now, to say that you have helped small business, how can you claim that you have helped small businesses when that money was somehow extracted from their pockets? It is added cost to them. That is why when we presented 2020 budget, when Minister Ejil did that, Thereafter, we passed a whole lot of reversals of those same fees and taxes because there were hardship measures on people. So for the APNU to claim that they help small businesses is nothing more than untruth. The numbers prove for themselves. But what is even more dangerous, Mr. Speaker, is in the year 2018 and 2019, the GDP growth was 2018 was 4.4%, and in 2019 it was 5.4%. And that information is not taken willy-nilly, it's taken from the World Bank data. If you go to their website, you'll see. So the honorable member just now, Ms. Jarita Fernandez, I think is the honorable member name, that said that in 2019 they had such explosive growth of the economy. It was 5.4%. So I don't know what explosive is 5.4%, and how the PPP will have to take years before they build back that. That is pure nonsense. It is pure nonsense. Last year in 2020, we recorded 43.5% increase in the GDP. And that has nothing to do with the APNU, absolutely nothing to do with their strategy or their plan. And I'll explain to you why it has nothing to do with their plan. The non-oil GDP went down by 7.1%. It says that the traditional sectors suffered by 7.1%. So for them to claim that 2019 was this explosive year and only 5.4% GDP growth you had, it is utter nonsense. It is misleading people. And we have to call the facts out. If the honorable member would have just looked at the figures coming out of the World Bank or the IMF or even to the Ministry of Finance, they would have seen that it was 5.4%. So I don't know where this explosive growth came from. But what is more dangerous here, Mr. Speaker, is that they were taxing people at a rate of 13.5% increase, and the country's income is 5.4%. So there's a huge disparity. They're taxing people more than what the earning capacity of persons are. And that means you're making the country a pauperized state, long and short of it. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about their plan that they claim that they have.
Honourable Member, before you talk about the plans, let me talk about one parliamentary word. Nonsense is one. So you use that, I think, 3 times. And
Okay,
the second issue is, if you're going to refer to the honourable members on the other side, please say honourable. If you're going to refer, as the last speaker skillfully did, talk about the party, then you could use the.
Right? Okay, Mr. Speaker, much guided. So, Mr. Speaker, I would like to speak about the number of claims made by opposition members over the past 3 days about they having this plan. They had vision, and they said former President David Granger had vision, and that is what we heard over and over and over. Mr. Speaker, if you look at a report that made it in May 31st, 2017. This is by the government, Stabroek News. This one is by Stabroek News. This is the launch, they had a GSDS strategy. We call it Green State Development Strategy. The Green State Development Strategy is what the APNU ventured into. The strategy came late in their administration, and when you look at that strategy, 184 pages of just fluff. There are no deliverables in that strategy. They don't have anything in that strategy can say, okay, this is a piece of paper as a plan for the country, let's go do these 5 things. There was nothing there. That Green State Development Strategy was a failure. It was never implementable. So to say that you have a plan where I'm sure a lot of them have never even read, it's a farce. Moving on from that, when President Granger, former President Granger, was campaigning, on the campaign stage, a lot of people were asking, where is the plan for Guyana? He said, I have the plan in my back pocket. That is what he said. Now imagine you have a whole country to run and you're saying you have the plan in your back pocket. Right? So that is the kind of disrespect that you get from leaders of a nation when you ask them, what is the plan for me and my family or for the children of this country? And they say, I have it in my back pocket. Mr. Speaker, I also heard of people on the APNU side talking about performance and efficiency in government. These fancy words I heard. Now, this is another report from Stabroek News dated May 31, 2019, when their own minister that time, Minister Jordan, said, government continue working on improving public sector investment. And when you read down in this report, it will say that as of June 30th, 2017, only 30% of the PSIP program was implemented. 30%. PSIP program, for those who have never heard the term, is the Public Sector Investment Program. 30% alone was implemented. Now, if I hire a contractor and they tell me that they only do 30% of the work in a year, obviously that contractor deserves firing. If you have an employee working and they only work in the 30% strength, it means that that employee is inefficient, they're even below the 50% mark. Here you have an entire government operating at 30% implementation of the public investment program. And these monies, Mr. Speaker, these monies were in the budget, debated in this very house, for programs, as they said, would help people. So here you are starving people of resources. That is what it goes down to, Mr. Speaker. Starvation of resources. Again, I go back to the issue of their claim that they didn't tax. Mr. Ramjatan, the Honorable Member, Mr. Ramjatan, said about taxes, and that's how we have carried up taxes, and they paid, and they collected taxes based on better administration. I would like to call him out on this one. On 2nd of February 2020, here is Mr. Godfrey Statius Face, who is the head of the tax agency. GRA rakes in $226 billion in tax revenue for 2019, up from 2018. This they gloat about. Mr. Speaker, this is their government putting both hands in people's pockets. That is what this is. If you gloat about increasing taxes, it came from households, it came from the ordinary workers, it came from businesses, especially small businesses. With small businesses already had a whole long regime of increasing fees and a whole set of things that they changed in 27 and moved from zero rated into standard rated VAT regime with a long list of things that they put in added cost to small businesses. Mr. Speaker, I would like to respond to the Honorable Sherwin Holder, who spoke about the APNU followed procurement laws. Now, I don't know if this is a joke or what it is. And he spoke of quality of work under the APNU. I really thought that I should answer this because I find it to be untruthful. And then, in his presentation, he smuggled God is good. Oh, God is good. And then, from the rest of them, in their presentation, they smuggle in terms like efficiency, integrity, honesty. Those are the words that are smuggled into the presentation by the opposition, which is fine on their part. But I would like to remind them that this is the same team that tried to rig an election. The same team that came here and talked about these fancy words tried to rig an election. It is the same team that in government had massive land giveaways on the East Bank and on the East Coast and the waterfronts of the country. It is the same team, yes, it is the same team that were taking gifts from state agencies like Transport and Harbors. Transport and Harbors, Mr. Speaker, Transport and Harbors have in their liability over $400 million that they have not paid NIS. It means to say that the workers in Transport and Harbors, money was deducted from their pay and was not remitted on their behalf to NIS to benefit them in their old age. Those monies that were spent for gift is somebody NIS. It is somebody NIS remittance. Same thing with the Demerara Harbor Bridge. Span 9 might collapse soon. The spans that open, span 9 and span 10, span 9 is troublesome. And we have in our budget to deal with it. But that organization should not be spending money to give gifts to anyone under the sun. Right? Mr. Speaker, these things, they get under your skin. But to say that you follow the procurement law, tell me about MARAD. Tell me about the MARAD Administration Department that just found out through an audit that 657 million Guyanese dollars were paid to contractor Courtney Ben and Brenco Shipping, one of their subsidiary, and zero was given in return. No repairs were done, no spares were given, Mr. Speaker. So you cannot say that you follow procurement laws when you have these massive breaches. $657 million could have given 65,700 children their $10,000 grant, Mrs. Speaker. That is what you're dealing with. That is the kind of government that we had. And people saw that. So if we think the Guyanese people for fool, I think we are seriously mistaken. Mr. Speaker, I move on. And I have to remind this House and the people that are looking about the airport. The CGIA airport that saw a scoping down, a massive scope down of the works that we were supposed to pay for 150 million US, the scope was reduced by 23.7 million US. Scope reduction for the same price. It's like you're buying 5 apples for $5,000 and the person says, I'll give 3 for the same $5,000. Pull back to. That is what it means. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Ramjatan spoke about sugar workers, and he spoke about rice, and he spoke about sugar. I would like to remind this House that it was the APNU that put tax on herbicide, pesticide, and fertilizer. They did that. We reversed it. I would like to remind the Honorable Member, Mr. Ramjatan, that he was the one that went on a press conference and talked about Russians trying to infiltrate an election that is used with pencil and paper. Pencil and paper, and call 3 Russian names, Stoli, Ivanov, and Smirnov. I think something was that name, a kind of vodka. Right? Mr. Speaker, it is utter, I can use the word garbage though, sir. Utter garbage. Mr. Speaker, I would like to now turn to do a simple womb to tomb analysis, or you call it a cradle to the grave analysis. It's about the stint of APNU in office. And I found 34 items that stick out, and I would like to apprise the House. The first one is the massive set of tax increases that we've been talking about since Noah was a boy in this House. The second is the land giveaways. The third is the shock and awe management style and philosophy of the APNU government. That is what you witness every morning. Is a different kind of negative hitting you. It's a shock. You call it the shock and awe principle of managing the economy. The increased land rents to farmers. The tax on all wood products, from sawn lumber to shingles, plywood, everybody they tax. We had to go and fight with the Forest Producers Association to have it reversed. They tax education, something that is developmental. We have to make a royal fight for that. All the schools came together. The private sector came together. I was part of the leadership of the private sector at the time that fought against this tax on education. Mr. Speaker, water. When you go to the masjid, you find people wash themselves with water before they pray. You find you go to the mandir, the same, they use it when they have their functions. The Christians, they use it to clean the churches and so on. Every household uses water for some good. They go on 170,000 water users. They went and put 14% tax on. 170,000. That is why, and that is increasing the cost of living on people. They accuse us of that. They were doing that. We reversed it. Mr. Speaker, if you move down the line, data. They tax data. They don't even want our people to talk to each other. They're going to tax the data. We reversed that. Mr. Speaker, the light bill. Imagine electricity. Energy costs is the one most thing that cause businesses not to grow, because it's a high cost. With manufacturers, commercial operation, micro-organization, energy costs. With households, children now are learning because of online services, and they need electricity. 205,000 customers GPL has. They went and put 14% VAT on that. How can you tax that? How can you tax that? PPP reversed that. This is the record. Mr. Speaker, food items, a whole host of them was in the zero-rated regime on the VAT, where you pay zero tax on them. They went and put them on the standard rated. You had to pay 14% tax on them. Farm equipment, mining equipment, fishing equipment, they tax. They put 40% VAT on them. We reversed every single one of them. Mr. Speaker, what did they do with this money? What did they do with this money? They paid buildings. What did they do with this money? If they could show what they did with the money, then we will have a better conversation. But show us what you did with the money. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member just now, Jurita Fernandes, said that we cannot speak to her about democracy and rule of law or something like that. Now I beg to differ. I will speak to them I will speak to you all about democracy as long as I live. And I will confront you all on democracy as long as I live. Mr. Speaker, the first thing is that former President David Granger breached the Constitution when he hired Mr. James Patterson at GCOM. A president of a country breaching its own constitution that he sought to adhere to. The CCJ said so. I'll come to that just now. I'll come to that. You wait. You sit in your seat. You're going to get it. The other one is the procurement laws. You will check the auditor report. All of the auditor report, you find cases of the Procurement Act being breached. If you look at the legislation that they brought to this House under their regime, SARA is one of the most perverse pieces of legislation there is that I've ever seen on the face of the earth. Long-reaching tentacles into people's private lives. That is the kind of thing that we saw under the APNU government. Mr. Speaker, they have embarrassed this nation by telling the world that 32 is not greater than 33. They have spent large sums of monies to have legal representation all over the Gotian Wandal, as they said, till the matters reach res judicata. Res judicata means it reach an end. But you all go to $1 with these legal matters just to pay people, just to pay legal people. Mr. Speaker, they, the first time, are squat in office for 5 months after they knew they lost the election. And I will tell them that I was there in the Ashman's building when Mingo pulled out the spreadsheet and went on the platform and reading out from it. I was there in the Ashman's building, Mr. Speaker, when the honorable member, Dr. Cummins, threatened the ABC diplomats to revoke their accreditation. I was there with Dr. Ali at the door when they were speaking. I was in the building. I was there at this recount when I heard that they invoked and said how dead people voted. When I was tasked with I was tasked with finding those people. We find hundreds of them that they said were dead. When the people said that the APNU said that they're dead, their family was upset that they're calling their people dead people. This is the kind of thing we have to endure. That is why I said, Mr. Speaker, when we collected and we went into office, we found a fractured country at every bone. Because these are the things that caused that to happen, Mr. Speaker. These are the things. Mr. Speaker, I further say that this is the only government in Guyana that enjoy visa restriction. The only government in our history since the Republic. Mr. Speaker, I understand that they will have to heckle me, which is fine. I've been heckled all my life. But tell me what happened to the 80 million US dollars. One of you all across, they just give an account for it. And you can't. You can't. Because we could not have found it.
Minister, you're going great, but you just stepped across. The honorable members over there.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Suzanne Rodriguez in her presentation talk about the housing ministry at the time. They didn't call it housing ministry with 12% implementation rate. Mr. Speaker, there's no other term for that than institutional laziness. Institutional laziness for a ministry to have 12% implementation rate. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I want to go to this budget. Mr. Speaker, this budget here was prepared by the Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh, Minister of Finance, and his team. This budget, Mr. Ashley Singh and his team, Dr. Ashley Singh and his team, presented is a template for development. This is the template for development. And I will tell you, in this budget, just for public works alone, the other ministers and MPs will do their share. But I will tell you, I picked up 24 items in this budget on the public works that shows how government money is spent in the right way to create social formation and economic formation. The first one is that government building, $70 million is in for government buildings, for a new lab for the ministry. There is $890 million in here for 20 pontoons for the Harbour Bridge and a rehab of Span 9 that is giving us problem. There is public infrastructure in here, $367 million for lights and sidewalks and parking lots. The Ogle to Echo 4-lane bypass road, there is $1,060,000,000 in this budget for that. Dredging and marine works, $425 million, which include the purchase of a new pilot launch and suction hopper for the dredger that we have. Mr. Speaker, $215 million for bridges for Better Hope, Good Hope, Cemetery Road, Big and Little Baibu, Granville, Lenora. Mr. Speaker, miscellaneous roads alone carry $7.9 billion. Urban roads, $1.1 billion. East Coast Demerara Road extension is $1.1 billion from Better Hope to Belfield. Mr. Speaker, the Mandela Road, $2 billion. Public and main access roads, $378 million. Hinterland roads, $2.1 billion. Linden to Mabura Road, 125 kilometers of road, is $3.5 billion. Farm to Market Access Road, $400 million. Schoonard to Parika Road, that's going to open up massive amounts of farmland for investment and housing scheme. We have the studies going to start $200 million in there. The rehab of the Linden Soos Dyke Road, about $150 million in there. Sea defense, $1.3 billion. Sea and river defense, $3 billion. Waterfront development for Stabroek and Vredenhoek, $185 million. Stellings, the repairs of Wakinam, Fort Island, Parika, Supanam, Legwan, $310 million. Navigational aids for beacons and removal of wrecks in the Demerara River because of the heavy marine traffic there. We have $645 million. Recondition of ferries, Malali, Makaura, Kimbia, and spares for these ferries, $500 million. Mr. Speaker, airstrips in the hinterland, Paramakatoy, Baramita, Karisparu, and Iteringban, $345 million. CGIA expansion project, $2.5 billion. That is what we have. This budget has $32.9 billion for public works. It is 32% of the entire spend of the country capital works. The total amount of capital works in here is $103 billion, Mr. Speaker. Public Works Ministry alone have $32.9 billion, or 32% of the works. This is in keeping with the President's vision of massive infrastructure development. This is in keeping with our promise to the people when we were campaigning that we will build out Guyana, modern Guyana. This is the template for development, Mr. Speaker. It is right here, and I endorse it fully. Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about the artifice of decorum and the holier than thou attitude that some of our MPs from the opposite side come here. These same MPs, before the election, were on TV. They were outside of this same building, and they were spewing untruths to the public. Mr. Speaker, the People's Progressive Party put on a website and published every single SOP that we have. I go back to this democracy issue because it's vital for development. The reason why it is vital to the development is because no investor in Guyana that will come here to spend millions of dollars don't do it in a 5-year cycle. It moves beyond the 5-year cycle to 10, 15, 20 years. Because if you build a hotel, it might be 20 million US. If you build any shore-based facility, it might be 100 million US. So the payback period and the MPV, we call it net present value analysis, spans over an election cycle. And for that very reason, you have to have a stable economic environment, a stable political environment. So the APNU over March 2nd to August 2nd has created the atmosphere of a dictatorship because you didn't come out of office when you lost. And you have not yet showed us any SOP. You have not showed the world any SOP. You should start by doing that. If you want to lecture us about democracy, pay Chronicle the money. Pay Chronicle the money. If you want to look at speaking to us and lecturing us about democracy, start by giving us a copy of your SOPs. Then we can have that conversation. Once we get the SOPs, then we will determine first that you lost, and then we will have that conversation. But don't come and tell us that you got the SOP in your back pocket too. Because it seems a lot of back pocket operation happening. You have your plan in the back pocket, the SOP is there too. You cannot do that. It is not right. If you continue as an opposition to operate in a vortex, that means that you will not be able to speak to the man on the ground. You might not be able to speak to the man on the ground.
Honorable Minister, someone has to pull 5 minutes out of their back pockets for you.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to give my colleague many minutes, but I'm restrained, my dear colleague, so I wish to ask for 5 minutes more to conclude.
Thank you,
you very
Honorable
much.
Minister Teixeira. Honorable Minister, you may continue to conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, facial expression tells you what is in a person. It's an expression of what is felt inside. And I saw the young MPs on the opposite side, the younger ones. The old ones, I can tell you they can speak straight face, but the younger ones speak with a little more passion. But then you see some of the anger coming out. Mr. Speaker, and they vent angrily. Mr. Speaker, I have learned, I've read and I've learned that anger is not a plan and venting is not a strategy. I repeat that. Anger is not a plan and venting is not a strategy. We, as the leaders of Guyana, we must find a way to deal with the commonalities. The commonalities that we share for the people of Guyana, for the betterment of Guyanese, we must start on some footing to start that happening. This budget, I heard that some people say they will never support a budget on the PPP side. But this budget, apart from the infrastructure and the hard assets it will deliver to the people of Guyana, there is a whole host of measures on the social services side. On the social services side, to help our people, help the disabled, help our pensioners, help the elderly, help children, help the sick. This budget has monies allocation inside to deal with programs there. So if you say that you will not agree with the elements of this budget, is that you're saying you're not agreeing to helping the pensioners. You're not agreeing to helping the sick. You're not agreeing to helping the children and the elderly. Is that the position? Is that the position that we want to take as leaders in Guyana? Mr. Speaker, I think not. I think not. But I do endorse His Excellency when he spoke in his opening remarks in our parliament about oneness. Mr. Speaker, children look at every one of us as we speak here. Children look at every one of us, our children, our collective children, and they see our behavior, and we don't want to create a country where we have sheer miscreants and kabakamites. We cannot do that. We have to have a culture where we grow children that show respect and deal with each other in kindness. Mr. Speaker, I hope that for the leadership of this House. And I'm asking my friends on the other side to at least start with some of the truths. Start with some of the hard thing about accepting that you lost the election and you are in the opposition. That is the first part. And let's talk about democracy. Let's have that serious conversation. But don't do it, accuse us, and you don't have not a single shred of evidence to say that you've won. Mr. Speaker, I believe that I made my case today, and I commend this budget to the Parliament for approval. Thank you, sir.